So now we have him, her, they slash them, it, us, and you. Which means that the category of movies that are hard to Google search or talk about to people is slowly growing. I mean, seriously, why are we making it so hard on ourselves? You know, like, oh, have you seen it? You know, I'm watching you. It's like, just, it doesn't, we gotta stop. Let's put an end to this now. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today our movie in the middle is Him. Him is the newest cult horror about an up-and-coming quarterback who attends a private training camp with the league's current GOAT, only to find the methods and tactics perilous. It stars Tyriq Withers, Marlon Wayans, and Julia Fox. So this is a football horror movie, which, unless I'm mistaken, has never happened. Of course, I have my own horrors every single Sunday. It's called being a Ravens fan.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
I joke, but the Ravens are a very good team when they want to be. Just not all at the same time or on the same day. And on that same note, I just want to be clear. Yes, I have a number 9 jersey, but this is not Tucker's jersey. I'm woefully out of the loop sometimes when it comes to football, which means that my jersey is actually for McNair. So, you know, I guess that was good timing to not be in the loop for once. Ha! The loop. I didn't even write that one down. That just happened. So yeah, like everyone's probably told you by now, this is not a Jordan Peele movie that he's directed, but he did produce it like he did with Candyman. But it definitely has that Peele vibe, you know, the kind of concept that it is. And when I first saw the trailer, I thought, like everybody else, I was watching like a Gatorade commercial. And I was like, really? Are we really having more commercials in between trailers? And then the guy smacked into the other guy, and I was like, whoa, okay. I guess I'm watching this. Starting off with the highs, I really like a lot of the imagery and the cult stuff in this movie. The cult stuff is, it's kind of here and there during the movie. I wasn't really sure in what intensity we were going with this, but there is a lot of really creepy stuff. There's a lot of really great shots that are very Jordan Peele-esque. I'm not going to take away from the actual director, Justin Tipping. This is his movie, but it is something that Peele would produce. Because of the way that a lot of the scenes are constructed, there's specifically one where there's a shot where somebody kind of crawls out of somewhere, and that was really, really good. I was like, whoa, that's a pretty good shot right there. But just the imagery in general is very cool, especially with the cult stuff. And there's a lot of the flashes of moments and things where I bet if you pause the movie, you'd be like, whoa, that's a creepy face. There's a lot of like colorful lights and things when there's like party scenes and kind of weird trippy stuff going on. So that was all really, really cool. You know, I was curious to see where that was going to go. Marlon Wayans is very good in this movie, at least for the most part. And that's something I'm going to get to in a second. But for what he did in this movie, he was very cool. And you could tell that he was just like a lot of the actors who have this type of character and role. He was just having fun with it, you know? You could tell that like he's taking it seriously, but he's gonna go all out. He's gonna go berserk when he's really given the license to. It is a fun type of role to be that it's like the mentor, but they're like kind of crazy. And there's clearly something more than we're not seeing immediately under the surface where we're like, this guy's kind of off. So it's always fun to have that kind of role because at first they seem cool, but then they slowly start to just build, or very quickly in some scenes, build this weirdness about them. They're odd, they're a little off, they might be a little dangerous, and it's always fun to see what they do with that. And I think Marlon Wayans did a very good job. He was definitely the most entertaining part of the movie by far. Also, the ending is very crazy. I do like the end scene. It's... And this is something I'm going to get to in a second. It's kind of hard to swallow a little bit in terms of, like, believability and feeling like this isn't ridiculous. But also that weirdly is part of what makes it fun. And there's a lot of gore and there's a lot of craziness that happens. And I got to be honest, I don't know, like, even though it felt kind of ridiculous, I kind of dug it, you know? I was like, fine, whatever. You know what? And they kind of leaned into how over the top it was. And that made it even better, and I kind of wish the whole movie was like that. You know, just to some degree, I wish that was leaned into a little bit more throughout the whole movie. But the ending was pretty crazy, and I did like that scene a lot. Also, I had no idea that was Julia Fox until the credits rolled, and she was really good. I haven't seen her in anything else except for Uncut Gems, and I have to say, she really likes her sports thrillers. For my middles, the first is Tyriq Withers. I think he did fine. The reason that it's a middle is because the way his character is, the way his character is directed, he's just kind of boring. You know, like, he's that very stoic, keeps everything close to the chest, jock kind of guy. And while that can be fine, and it's an interesting character trait, a lot of times that ends up coming off kind of boring. And like, dude, are you going to react to anything? Now, I will say, I was getting a lot of Foxcatcher vibes in that respect. Like, Channing Tatum's character in that movie is just, God, he's just a wet blanket. In this one, it's a little bit better. He does start to react to stuff more and more. I do like him, but he's just not that interesting. You know, I'd say I like the pressure that he's under and kind of the mental, like the mind games that he's going through with Marlon Wayans' character. But I don't know. I thought he was just okay. Not to say Tyriq Withers was bad at, acting the role. It's just he wasn't given a lot to do. Also, the premise is cool. Like, it's obviously going to be intriguing already. A football horror movie. You know, like, when I heard about this like a year and a half ago, I was like, I definitely have to check that out because I have no idea what that's going to be like. But, the whole, like, pushing yourself, how far will you go to become the best, and especially, like, being part of a cult and with all of that, that is a pretty interesting idea. So because we've had that kind of premise a lot, and we've had this kind of premise where, it's like go to a remote location and, be there for a couple days or a week, and things start to get weirder and weirder until, some big chaotic finale happens and, blood's drawn and all this stuff. We've had that a lot. That the premise is interesting, but it's kind of been done a lot. I will say it's probably I would say a tried and true one. Like, if you can do it well, then great. I'll take another one of that. But otherwise, it just kind of feels like the same thing over and over. We've had that with, like, The Menu and Midsommar and Ex Machina, and very recently this year, The Assessment and Opus. I like that they can do different variations on it for sure, but it just felt like we have seen this before, and I wish they just did a little bit more new with it. For my lows, my biggest one is that I just can't figure out how to take this movie. Like, because it's a horror movie about football, a lot of it is trying to be deep, or at least the characters are being deep in terms of, like, football's my whole life. You gotta want this. And I get that, and that's fine for, like, sports movies for sure. But it's one of those things that, like, because it's taken to such, like, the nth degree of intensity, and they're doing a whole cult around it, at times it can feel kind of ridiculous, but it also feels like the movie is sometimes wanting to, make it feel like that, like, these people are insane. Like, they're like football, then family, then God. Like, football's first. And from a character perspective, it can be really good. It can be like, yeah, this guy's insane. But it also feels like sometimes the movie is trying to show how insane that is in a kind of funny way. Like I said, the ending gets kind of ridiculous. It gets very over the top about it. And I thought that was funny, but it's like sometimes the movie is being serious and sometimes it's not. And I wasn't really sure how to take that. And I'm thinking, like, well, what's the difference between, like, this and Whiplash? In Whiplash, it's the same thing. He's pushing himself to a point where it's a thriller and it's ridiculous and it's dangerous and scary. But there's not a cult, it's more of like a very bare bones, intense, ground level conflict between two people. And this is like doing a whole cult and being insane about it. And it's just football. And again, it's more than just about football. Obviously, it's about power and it's about drive and we hunger and whatever the song is. It just felt at a certain point like crossing the line of believability in terms of I'm scared more so than this is kind of funny. Also, there's just some moments that are like confusing. I'm not going to say it's on the level of like Don't Worry Darling, where there's a lot of like weird stuff is happening and you're like, oh, I wonder what the end of this is going to be and why all this stuff's happening, and then you don't find out at all. You find out, but it just kind of feels like there's some moments that are a little bit too quick in how they're portrayed, or they're a little bit too vague, or whatever it is, where the real message of the movie or what you're trying to get from that specific scene just feels kind of lost a little bit. Some things aren't quite explained as much as they could be. Then there's like one specific moment towards the end of the movie that something major happens, but I was so confused as to what exactly was going on in the way it was executed that reveal was kind of ruined. I was still shocked, but I was like, man, I wish I had been aware of what was happening up till that point so I could have had like the full experience of being shocked that happened. So overall, him is fine. It's another version of stuff we've gotten before, which is fine. You know, you have different details, different characters. It's cool. You know, I think that some parts of this were more interesting than, say, Opus. I think that, you know, some parts of Opus were better than this. Overall, it feels like it's okay, and I got some stuff out of it, but not really a whole lot. It's just kind of another one, and it had a lot of potential and has a lot of great imagery, but it just doesn't really stick the landing as something that I'm really gonna, you know, remember or go back to a lot, if at all. That being said, I don't think it's as bad as people are saying. It's not like horrendous. It just doesn't really do a whole lot with what it could have done. I'm gonna give him a 2.5 out of 4. Well, guys, let me know what you thought about him, if you liked it more than other people are saying, if you did think it was that bad and why. And let me know who you root for in the NFL and what you think about the season so far. I think I'm kind of sad and a little frustrated, but we're gonna be fine. You know, just hold on to the ball, right? Like, and as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.